It's Fill Your Plate Now, where every bite brings you closer to the farm gate and further from what's unhealthy. Now here's your hosts, Julie and Tammy, helping you live well by filling your plate well.
Well, you know, June is National Dairy Month,
Yes.
and we are celebrating by talking to a couple of people this month that are in the dairy industry.
Yes, I'm excited about who our guest is. I know you're going to lay out her introduction, but this young woman is amazing, and we are very privileged to have her in the ag community in general, and definitely in dairy.
Yes, I know, you know, sometimes everyone thinks dairy farmers are men, but Jen is a woman and doing an amazing job with dairy, and she's been an amazing spokesperson for us and helped us out in so many ways because everyone's curious about the dairies and dairy farming
Right.
and agriculture.
And what is it that she does that she's, at least with the kids, kind of become famous?
Yeah, Adopt a Cow. People
Okay.
stop her in the grocery store now.
Awesome.
Adopt a Cow is one of these programs that we do that's virtual, and she might even talk a little bit about it. But schools can sign up for free, and the kids follow the first year of a calf's life and name the calf
awesome.
and learn all about what happens during that first year of life, and then get to meet the cow virtually. And she has quite a following, that's for sure.
Incredible. That's neat.
So anyway, but let me tell you a little bit about her and our listeners a little bit about Jen. Jen is a second-generation dairy farmer managing her family's dairy, Stotz Dairy, in Buckeye, Arizona. She went to Cal Poly and got a degree in dairy science and ag business. And then she worked at Wells Fargo for 5 years in commercial banking before returning to managing the 14,000 Holsteins in Jersey on her family farm. She's on the board of the local co-op, United Dairymen of Arizona. She's on our board for Arizona Milk Producers and also serves as treasurer, and numerous other committees and boards revolving around animal health and sustainability within the dairy and ag segment or sector. So anyway, in addition to all of her big job, she also is a mom, and her husband have 3 darling kids, Alice, who's 14, Lucy, who's 10, and Tommy, who's 8. So she has a full-time job on top of a full-time job.
You know, I'm beginning to think we're lucky just to have her here. Welcome, Jen. This is fun.
Hey, thank you for having me, ladies. I appreciate it.
Well, we kind of did a little background on you, but could you go ahead and tell us in your own words a little bit about your family heritage in the dairy business and what interested you and how you got into it?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I grew up on the dairy. I actually now live in the house that I grew up in, which is kind of a common affliction for farm kids. But yeah, I had great memories growing up on the dairy. My mom was the calf feeder for a while, and she tells stories about, you know, I'd be like, Mama, I'm thirsty, and give me a minute, and I'll get there in a second. And then she'd turn around and I'm drinking out of the calf bucket. And I think the time she went and told my dad that she was done was when my brother and I think we were 3 and 5, absconded with the calf cart and drove it into a fence. That was when she came back and told my dad that, you know, you need to hire somebody. I'm done with this working outside. I'll be in the office from now on. But that's actually a lot of how I paid my way through college, was working on the dairy every summer. Starting in junior high, I was working every summer, every break. I learned all the different parts of the dairy. I worked starting in the milk barn, calf barn, maternity barn, hospital barn, pretty much every job on the dairy. I learned how to do it, and I fell in love with it. And I took a break and moved to California for a little bit because I was living in Monterey, and you could see the ocean from my backyard, and it was great. But when my oldest daughter was born, I realized my priorities had changed, and I wanted to come back to the dairy. Luckily, at that point, we had just expanded into over doubling the size of the herd. We had bought a local dairy that had gone out of business. We bought it, And my dad was looking for more help trying to get it running. And he had been calling me all the time, and my mom. They were tag teaming, telling me how, I was ruining their life because in addition to not coming home and helping take care of the cows, I was withholding their only grandchild. And so I guess I made the right, good, smart decision and moved back to the dairy. And I've been working on it ever since.
That's awesome. Um, and you sort of gave us a little bit of a sense of dairy life in the day to day, but share with us a typical day on the dairy.
I guess the best thing that I like about working on the dairy is that I don't really have a typical day. I mean, yesterday I was up early. I wake up at 5 every day, and I was out driving the cows, and I saw a couple of guys were struggling to move cows in a pen. So I jumped out, parked the truck, and was helping them move cows all morning. And then this morning I was coordinating sampling cows that we had to send into the laboratory to get tested. Tomorrow, which is Saturday for right now, that's actually, or no, what Saturday is going to be the end of the month, so I get to do month-end inventory. So I mean, every day is a new day, every day is a different day. Sometimes I get to go on Zoom calls and hang out with people like you. Sometimes I get to go on committee meetings. And I mean, luckily, hopefully I am getting to spend at least a little bit of time on the dairy every day, driving the cows. And one of the big things as a manager is just making sure that nobody else has a problem that they can't deal with. Because I guess my number one job on the dairy is solving the problems.
Sure.
So,
and it sounds like a lot of, making sure that everything is running smoothly. Talk about being boots on the ground. You definitely are boots on the ground.
I know. I don't know how you have time for everything you do. And you sit on a lot of committees, particularly like with animal health and sustainability. Tell us a little bit about the dairy and some of the sustainability practices that are going on there.
So one of the things that we do a lot of dairies do it, but we're really proud of it, is we feed a lot of byproducts of the human food cycle and just of the human, not just the food cycle, but we feed a lot of that to the cows. So one of the ones that we have kind of become infamous for is that a lot of the local Walmarts and Sam's Clubs and other grocery stores will ship us all of their produce that doesn't sell. And we are able to feed that. We don't feed it to the cows, we feed it to the heifers. Because fun fact, if a cow eats an onion or a garlic, it can actually make the milk taste like onions and garlic. So we feed it to the heifers, which are the teenager cows. And so they get to eat all of that.
I was just going to explain to our listeners the difference between a heifer and a cow. Okay.
So cow, and when they're born, they start out as a calf. When they get a little bit older, we call them a heifer. Once they're about to have their first baby, they're a springer. And then once they have a baby, that's when they transition to a cow. And this might be a little bit rudimentary. I don't know. I'm used to explaining stuff to all of the elementary school kids that do the Adopt-A-Calf program, but cows are like people. They can only make milk once they've had a baby. And so it's important to make sure that they have that first baby. And that's when they transition from heifer to cow.
That's great.
Yeah. Other things that we feed is we feed gin trash, which is what's left over from the cotton plant after they pull out all of the usable cotton to make clothing, bedding, stuff like that. What we feed almond hulls and shells, which is what's left over after they get all the almonds out for the human food chain. We feed distillers. We feed bakery, which bakery is a fun one. That's like the big commercial bakeries. If they have a batch that's gone bad or some flour that's getting too old or stale or something like that, they'll grind it all up into a powder, and then we feed it to the cows. And when I was a kid, I used to love going over there and looking through it, because every once in a while you'd get lucky and find a gummy bear. So
I love it.
But yeah, actually 40% of the food that the cows eat is actually a byproduct. But if it wasn't for dairy cattle, it would end up in a landfill otherwise.
Wow.
It's just stuff that's left over from what humans can take off of it. And since cows are ruminants, which means they have 4 parts to their stomach, they are able to digest stuff a lot better than humans would be able to, and they can digest stuff that humans are not able to. So they're able to make use of these products that humans would otherwise just consider trash.
And do other dairies do this too, or is this kind of one of your sweet spots? Thinking of the bakery.
Oh, I think every dairy feeds stuff that is a byproduct. Different zones of the country have different ones. Like I've seen, I've seen a few dairies that are next to like even candy stores or not candy manufacturers, and they'll even be selling or feeding them like the Skittles that were misprinted or something. And at first I was like, that's wild, cows eating Skittles. But when I talked to our nutritionist about it, he was like, Jen, really, it's just a sugar, which is a carbohydrate. And that's something that you have to wrap your mind around as a dairy farmer. You're not feeding, you're not feeding ingredients, you're feeding nutrients.
Oh, wow.
So all of the food that we feed, we actually send to a laboratory. We're taking samples of it all the time and sending in. And that way we know exactly how much protein, how much carbohydrates, all the vitamins, all the minerals, fat, all of that's in the food. We work with 2 different dairy cattle nutritionists. There's one that feeds the younger cows and one that feeds the older cows. And they are working to make the exact perfect balanced ration for every cow in the dairy based on how old she is and what stage of lactation she is, which means how long ago it was that she had her last baby.
I always get jealous because I tell the public, dairy cows have their own personal nutritionists. I don't have a personal nutritionist. So I think that's so fascinating to hear that insight and know that dairies are doing and maximizing. You're not feeding, let me see if I quote that right, not feeding them.
We're not feeding them ingredients, we're feeding them nutrients.
So besides that, other parts of the whole dairy process, obviously, and you guys have a pretty decent sized dairy, cows are going to produce manure. What are you guys doing with the manure and the waste?
That is a great question. We're actually doing multiple things with it. On one of our 2 locations, we have a methane digester. So we are collecting all of the wastewater that comes off the dairy, and we have it covered, and we're collecting the methane off of that. And we're making enough power that we're powering at approximately, they said, the equivalent of 500 Arizona households. So after the water that's in the lagoon, we have to keep it at like a certain level to power the methane digester. So once we get to that level, we're maintaining it. We'll use the water that we don't need in there anymore. We use it to water the crops that are growing that will feed the cows the next year. We also clean out the manure from the pens a couple of times a year, and we use that as fertilizer. So it's the crops that we fed to the cows last year that they ate this year, that they're pooping out this year, that we're putting on the field to grow next year. So it's just a big cow food circle of life.
I was going to say, it's a circle of life.
A cow poop circle of life, yes. That's great. And
you guys could come to dinner sometime. My mom gets exasperated sometimes. My grandma used to really just like, you dairy people, because my grandma was not in agriculture at all. And it always devolves to poop with you. You always have to talk about poop. Why can't you ever go through dinner without talking about cow poop at least once?
Well, it's like that children's book. I've said this before. Everybody poops.
And new parents get obsessed with poop for infants because it tells you a lot, so.
Yeah, that's true.
That is the nutritionists that we work with. They actually, a lot of what they do is they're walking pens and looking at different piles of cow poop. And apparently you can tell a lot about a cow's health by looking at what comes out the back.
Wow.
But that also, it is attributed, I think, to sustainability, all of that recycling like that. I think there's some really great things dairies are doing to recycle and really help the community, because you're taking in some of the product that would go in a landfill or somewhere else, that they have to dispose of, and it's being utilized for the cows. So, and same thing.
One of the most sustainable things that we do is treating all of the cows the best that we possibly can by feeding them like they're Olympic athletes. I mean, we're feeding them within 0.1% of every nutrient that they need to maximize their production. So cows nowadays, I think I've heard before, you, as the resident dairy expert, Tammy, you might be able to correct me on this, but I've heard that cows are making like 50% more milk than cows made 50 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So we can have 2 cows instead of 3. And that's saving on the footprint. That's saving because, I mean, the cows drink the same amount of water and they're eating the same volume of food. They're just eating better quality of it. And we're just testing it. So that way we are able to do our part for the environment just by making sure that the cows are as healthy and happy and comfortable as possible.
It's awesome.
And I know you take such good care of your animals. In fact, I believe I was out there one time when you had that cow, well, the thermometer, that large thermometer, and you had misters and fans, and it was dropping the temperature. How much is it? 30 degrees or more for the cows?
Oh yeah, at least. I took a picture once, and it's probably the one that you're referring to, where it was like 117 degrees outside on the, there's the thermometer, and it has the outside temperature and the under the shade temperature. And outside it was 117 degrees, and under the shade, I think it was 67. And I put that on Facebook way back in the day, and people are like, I don't even keep my house that cold. You know, my kids complain about it sometimes, and I'm like, listen, the cows are the ones that pay the bills. The cows get to have as much air conditioning as they want.
Yeah.
So
I think it went viral.
It went viral. I was going to say it. I don't know if you remember that part, Jen, but it really was popular on the internet there for a while, or on social media. Yeah.
Yeah, people are always surprised that Arizona has dairies just because it gets so hot. And outside of 3 months in the summer where the cows definitely are not leaving the air conditioning, Arizona is a great place to dairy because the one thing cows really don't like is wet. And it's not ever really that wet in Arizona. Cows can be happy, healthy, and comfortable in Arizona all year round just because they're never having to slog through the mud to get to their food. It's easy to have them out in the big open dry lot pens. We don't have to have the inside barns like a lot of the dairies that are in the Midwest. I mean, they have their whole other set of challenges. So I don't know. I prefer the heat. I'm a desert girl. So I always say I don't have to shovel the sunshine out of the driveway to get out. You know, like you guys can keep your snow. I like the sun.
And you know, when we're talking about water, sometimes water is a concern in Arizona. How do you all handle the water on the dairy?
So we are on wells, and we take meter readings every month. We have to stay underneath a certain level that's monitored by state agencies, but we're doing everything we can to make sure that we are being responsible. I mean, I'm second generation on this property. I would love it if we went to the third generation. And so we need to make sure that we're using our resources responsibly because, I mean, building a whole new dairy is a huge undertaking, huge capital investment. I mean, can you imagine trying to, even just buying a new house is expensive. If you're having to buy a house for you and your 14,000 cows, gets a little bit pricey. So it just makes sense that you're taking care of the land and doing everything you can to conserve your resources.
Are you able to recycle the water then?
Yeah, after it goes through the methane digester, we use it all to grow the crops. So even the dairy that doesn't have the methane digester on it, because we have 2 different locations. One of them was close enough to a electrical substation that we could tie into it. The other one was too far away, but even all the water on that dairy, we're using it to grow all of the crops that are right to the south of us.
That's fantastic. I think a lot of people don't realize that most dairies are family farms and you're part of the community, and you know, you want to take care of the land and the animals and the water resources just like they do.
Right.
And you're raising your family. I mean, it's the business that keeps you guys making a living, so you've got to be careful with what you do. And on that issue, especially as it relates to food safety, what mechanisms are in place on your dairy and a typical dairy in Arizona so our Arizona families can be assured that the milk that gets to the shelf is, you know, not the quality's there. We know that thanks to farmers like Jen, but that food safety component.
Great question. So we clean all of our cows every time they come into the milk barn. I mean, it's a food processing facility, so we are doing everything we can to keep it as clean as possible. But every tanker load of milk, when it leaves the dairy, multiple samples are taken and we ship them to at least 2 different laboratories, and all of that milk is tested before it is allowed to be bottled.
So-
And like I always say, I mean, I drink milk out of the grocery store just like everyone else. All of the employees that we have on the dairy drink milk out of the grocery store. So we are making sure that we're taking as good of care of getting the milk out of the cows in the safe and cleanest way possible, because I might be the next one drinking that milk.
Right. And it's true. So every tanker of milk is tested.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if
And
if
if they
something's
find-
go ahead.
If they find anything in that tanker that is not allowed, then you actually get charged for the tanker of milk, and that's a lot. I mean, that's a possibly putting you out of business style charge. So nobody wants that.
Wow. Wow. And, you know, speaking of the tankers, we are always promoting local. How long does it take from the milk to leave the dairy to get to the grocery store?
I think you're the one that told me, Tammy, 48 hours. Isn't that it?
I
48 hours from
I-
the table?
I believe that's it. It hasn't changed, I guess. Yeah. You know, I mean, when you buy local, which on the cartons, you'll see the number 04 if it's an Arizona dairy or processed in Arizona. And that means it's about as fresh as it can get.
Oh, yeah. If you buy, especially if you're buying the gallons of milk, it's almost always going to be local milk.
That's
It's
awesome.
really hard to ship gallons containers. They're just heavy, and it's prohibitively expensive, especially in Arizona when we're so far away from any other major city area. So any of the milk that you drink here would be local.
How has your dairy changed over the years? You guys are a generational farm family, so you've probably seen some of these changes. Maybe some of them have been very subtle, but I'm just curious what.
Well, I mean, we've gotten bigger. When my dad started the dairy, he started it with, was it 500 cows and 2 employees? And we are up to 14,000 cows-ish right now. I think 14,532 this morning. And we're floating right around 100 employees. So we've gotten bigger. I think we've stayed the same in that our motto has been and always will be, treat every cow like she's your only cow. So we are doing continuous training with everybody just to make sure that everybody knows the right way to treat all the cows. One of the big things that's changed is technology. I don't remember because it was before I was conscious, but used to be that we had a big like card deck, and every cow had all of her information through her lifetime written onto this card. And if she had, you know, too many things happen, they'd have to put another card in there for her, and it was all the cow cards. Well, now every cow has a special ear tag that has a radio frequency ID chip in it. And we have handheld, oh, and one of them's actually beeping at me right now. We have handheld computers that we can go out and scan the cow's ear tag, and it'll tell you everything you need to know about that. And even those are changing because used to be that I would have to physically plug it into the computer to get it to download everything that we had done on the cows that day. And we are actually in the process right now of transferring to everything is Wi-Fi enabled, so that as you're doing stuff to the cows, as long as you're able to connect to one of the Wi-Fi that we have on the dairy, you can get like live updates of what you're doing with the cows.
Wow.
So
Technology. It's changed so much. It's amazing.
Really has.
And, you know, one of the questions we get sometimes is there a difference between conventional milk and organic milk? What would you tell people?
Nothing that organic people would be happy for me to say, but we're conventional dairy. I think we do a great job with our cows. I joke that, I mean, organic's just a different way of doing things. I can't say too much. I'm going to make somebody mad.
Okay. No,
I honestly think conventional is the right way to do it because that's what we do. I mean, there's a place for organic milk. If people want to drink it, that as long as they're drinking milk from cows, I'm happy with it.
That's a very good answer, and I think it's a choice, but the nutrients are the same. I know from the nutrition
absolutely.
side, they're the same in whether it's
just
organic or non-organic or, low fat, whole milk, all the same nutrients.
Right.
So it's
you know what, as long as they're drinking milk, I'm happy. And Jen 10 years ago would not have held her tongue, but you get older and wiser and you learn how to, sometimes you just got to be quiet. So.
Milk is milk, whether it's conventional or organic. Milk is nutrient dense, whether it's conventional or organic. It's basically what you're telling.
As long as it comes out of the cow.
As long as it comes out of the cow.
Yeah, we were just having a discussion a few minutes ago offline about how nutrient dense milk is and how important it is in the diet. Milk, cheese, yogurt, all of those things, because you have a lot of people that are on diets now. 1 in 8 are taking weight loss medication, and they have to make every calorie count.
I heard when I was at Cal Poly one time, there was a big sign up. They used to do poster boards around in the ag department buildings. And there was a big one that said that milk is the second most nutritious thing, I think, densest nutrition calorie that you could get. The only thing that was more was an egg. But in order to get that, you would have to crush up the shell and eat the shell with it. So, I mean, I don't know about you. I guess I'd rather get my calcium from milk than eggshells, but
yeah. That's interesting.
That'd be a little easier. I know. I think they say sardines are a source of calcium, but then you have to eat the little bones in there, and that just doesn't appeal to me either.
You don't like that. So what's the hardest, the farm girl in me is going to typically ask the farm questions. What's the hardest part about being a dairy farmer?
Oh gosh, the hardest part, dealing with all this stuff that keeps dragging me off the dairy. I mean, it's just all of the new regulations you have to worry about and all of the new forms that you're having to fill out and all the paperwork and the politics around immigration and the workforce. I mean, sometimes I wish we could just milk our cows and let everything else be, but that's part of being a dairy farmer.
I hope you weren't talking about us too, taking you off your job for a little bit here. So
no, I mean, this is a volunteer thing, so I would have said no if I didn't want to.
We appreciate you giving everybody some insight into what goes on a dairy, and along that line, what is your favorite part about being on a dairy and working the dairy, or do you have a favorite story that you would like to share?
Favorite part. I mean, like there's so much I love about working on the dairy. Like I said earlier, it's different every day. And when I worked for Wells Fargo for, I think, 5 years, and sometimes it would be so mind-numbingly boring that I would be on the verge of tears of boredom. And I have literally never had that problem out here. There's always something going on, always something to do. Always a new challenge to tackle. There's always, more work. I had an employee for a long time that always said, too much work is always better than not enough work. And absolutely. I love that I get to work with my parents. I mean, my mom and my dad are some of my best friends, and I get to hang out with them all the time. And then I love that I'm doing something important, which is, feeding people. Other jobs, we learned during COVID what's considered an essential job, and there was never any question that people that are involved in producing food, that's something that is essential, because feeding people, you can live without going to buy something, new clothes, you can live without it, but everybody has to eat every day. So that's important.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And, I think one of the things I'm most envious of when I've been out there, a lot of times you can have the kids with you. And again, like you said, your parents are your best friends, just that whole family atmosphere. And it just, and everybody working together. I think that's fantastic.
Glad you all get along.
I told you the story about how my mom was so dismayed when she saw me drinking out of the calf bucket one time because I couldn't wait for her to get me a drink. When I take my kids to work, when one of my kids was younger at one point, and I had him at work, and he kept going, I'm thirsty. And I turned and I looked at him and I go, you know what, son, if a calf bucket was good enough for me, it's good enough for you. There's one right over there. Go drink out of it.
And I love that all of you guys get along.
It builds a good immune system.
Yes, it does.
Well, that's a whole nother segment, but yeah.
What I'm struck with, Jen, and I've always felt this way the times that I've been able to visit with you and even interviewed you for Rosie on the House on KTAR and so many other shows, is that the passion that you have for what you do. When you were at Cal Poly, did you always expect that you would come back to the farm? I got a vibe that you were pursuing finance in the beginning.
So freshman year, I mean, all through high school, I grew up, like I said, working on the dairy, and I loved it. And freshman year, I was working for the Cal Poly dairy. They have one on campus there. And all of a sudden I had an epiphany one day after work, and I got home and I called my dad and I said, "You've been asking me, I finally realized what I want to do." And he goes, "What's that?" And I said, "I want to come home and take over the dairy someday." And he took a minute and he goes, "Jen, that's going to be your brother's job. That's what he's going to do." And I was like, "Oh." And so it took me a couple more years. I ended up double majoring last minute and got the dairy science and ag business degrees because I decided to become a banker for some reason. I think some banker had come into one of my classes and guest spoke, and I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. I guess I'll try that. But it was never anything that I was in love with. It was just something that I was doing. And I always loved the dairy. And then when when my parents ended up expanding the dairy and it was big enough that I was able to come back, I was super happy about that. And then my dad always says, luck is when opportunity meets preparation. And I guess lucky for me, I was prepared that when my brother decided he didn't want to be on the dairy anymore, I was here and I was prepared. And when my dad turned and looked at me and said, "About that conversation that we had 15 years ago, were you still interested?" And I was like, "I guess I'll be your silver medal."
But I think it's so neat that you stuck it out and stuck with it, and look what you're doing today. And while it's not easy, there's something about the sense that you give us that you found it rewarding, and you're doing something that's important and honorable to do, and that's feeding America.
Well, it was easy to stick it out and be here just because I loved what I was doing. I mean, even if my brother was still here, I would still be here working because I just really like being on the dairy. It's one of my husband always says, "You better never sell the cows because then you'll have to come up with a whole new personality."
So if consumers have questions and want to get to know more about what you do in the dairy, where can they go?
They should definitely contact Arizona Dairy Council because they have
There you
people
go.
on staff that can tell them that kind of thing.
And you are on Facebook, right?
Kind of. I mean, I used to post more regularly, and then I just got really busy and I wasn't following it. And
It's hard.
I do the Adopt a Calf now. I guess that I was trying to reach people with Facebook for a while, and I mean, I don't know.
Well,
Adopt a Calf has been so much more rewarding because I feel like the kids are actually interested in learning and they're just there to have a good time versus arguing with trolls on Facebook wasn't doing it for me anymore. And when the kids ask questions, it's because they're genuinely interested, not because they're trying to trip you up or something. I don't know. I have a great time doing Adopt a Calf though. That's why I think I got an award last year that I've been doing it for 4 years, and they said nobody's ever done it 4 years continuously before. I'm like, well,
No,
I guess I'm a glutton for punishment. I have a good time with it.
First of all, I think you should be the gold medal winner, not the silver medal.
I agree.
You are in my book, and you have done such an amazing job helping to educate the kids on a dairy and cows in their first year of life. And I touched on it just for a second in the intro, but do you want to tell our listeners a little bit about what's involved there? It's not actually adopting a cow, but tell them a little bit about the schools that are involved. And gosh, we have thousands and thousands of kids watching you every year. I remember you said they come up to you at the grocery store and recognize you from Adopt a Cow. So.
Yeah, it's happened. I got recognized at the grocery store. I had to check my basket and make sure I didn't have anything incriminating in there before I was like, yeah, that's me, Farmer Jen.
That's funny.
And at the county fair, people would recognize me. But no, I'm not doing it for the fame. God, I don't need to be any kind of famous for it. But so it's discoverdairy.com is where you would go on, and it is free for whoever wants to do it. It could be a teacher, be a homeschool group. It could just be a mom or a dad that wants to do it. There's libraries that have adopted calves, daycares, anybody that has, that's interested in doing it. And every year I go and pick out the 3 cutest calves that were born, and I think it's the first week of September. And I take pictures of them, and I do videos, and I take their height and weight so that the kids can chart their growth. And I send all of the pictures out to the organization that runs it. They package it together with different learning materials. They send it out to everybody who's on the email list. They match up kids or the groups with the dairy that is closest to them, I think geographically. So I get all the Arizona dairies. I get a few Nevada and New Mexico, and I even have a few over in Hawaii, which is fun. But apparently I'm the closest dairy to Hawaii that participates. So that's cool. But and then at the end of the year, I do it's like a YouTube live where everybody can call in and watch, and then they can submit their questions in real time, and I'll answer them on air.
Yeah, and they come back year after year. The teachers love the program because it teaches kids about agriculture and dairy, and the kids love it because they get to learn a lot about a baby cow and the first year of life, and a little bit more about agriculture too.
Ag in the classroom
I had to do a 20-something minute long video of a virtual dairy tour that we turned in. And one of my friends is a teacher, and she said that this last year was very challenging for her. She said it was one of those years where all the kids are just up and running and screaming all of the time. And when she showed them that video, it was 20 minutes where they just sat in rapt attention staring at the TV. And so she said from then on, every time she needed a break, she would pop the movie back in and they would watch it some more. So,
I love it.
That may be on demand with parents.
That made it a lot worth it that I spent so many hours filming that thing. I mean, it gives you 20 minutes a day to, not go crazy while you're teaching a class of third graders.
Yes, and it's so important to be teaching agriculture in the classroom, especially those primary grades. Arizona Farm Bureau has a program as well. I don't know, though. You sound pretty popular. We might have to steal her volunteerism away and help us with some stuff, too. But they've even done testing on test scores. If you make application of agriculture in the classroom, however that is, like in the case of what you do with the Adopt-A-Cow, the kids retain knowledge better and their test scores improve. So moms and dads, you've all got to get into making sure that there's some agriculture education in the classroom or, online.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, did we?
I'm just always happy that at the beginning of the program, you'll ask the kids, like, where do you think milk comes from? And they say the grocery store. And at the end, they know that milk comes from cows, and that's where my cow lives, and that's what she eats, and that's what she does all day. So, I mean, it's important the thing that's keeping you alive, you probably better know what's going on behind the scenes on it.
Yeah, I mean, you were asking if you were getting too elementary when you were earlier in the podcast, but I have had adults, think that cows were males. So you can't get too elementary. People are just not exposed to agriculture.
Tammy, I took a couple of calves to the Phoenix Children's Museum one time for a meet a calf night there. And one of the parents asked me what kind of dog it was. And I was like, she just mooed at you. It's not a dog. That's a cow. And she was like, a cow?
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
So, there's a guarantee on all of this. Jen, you'll always have a job teaching about dairy, and I think we'll always have a job teaching the public in general about nutrition and agriculture.
Farm to table. That's what's important.
Farm to table.
Anything you want to leave our listeners with, or any points that we may have missed, Jen?
Everybody who's listening, make sure you add some dairy into your diet.
Agreed.
Support your local dairy farmer.
Yeah.
Yes.
I always end up every Adopt-A-Calf thing. I always say, all right, you guys go home and tell your mom and dad or whoever you live with, buy some milk, buy the cheese, get the yogurt, get the ice cream, the whipped cream, the sour cream. I don't care. Tell them you want it and you want to eat it every night from now on.
Good advice.
Yep.
Good advice. Well, thank you so much, Jen, for taking the time to be with us today. We really appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
This was wonderful.